Who the hell is Paul Jones? Especially if we're not talking about John Paul Jones, legendary musician of Led Zeppelin, and we don't. If you would like to find out, stay with me for a couple of minutes. My name is Matthias Merkelbach, and I am running the channel Neverland, which is all about forgotten records. I speak English to you, but I'm not a native English speaker, I have to confess, so hopefully you will excuse my little flaws and mistakes and enjoy my presentation anyway. So this channel is not about the Doobie Brothers, Gentle Giant, Rush, Yes, Genesis, Fleetwood Mac, Dire Straits, or Deep Purple. It's about musicians and artists on the periphery of rock music's history. Today, it is about Paul Jones. He was a singer and a harmonica player in a band named Manfred Mann. Isn't that strange that a band had been named after its keyboard player? Yes and no. There was a band named Alice Cooper from 1969 until 1974. Afterwards, Alice Cooper, the singer of the band, became a solo artist. There was a band called Brinsley Schwarz, and this one was the guitarist of the band, later joined Graham Parker and The Rumor. You see, there are other examples. In 1964, Manfred Mann was following the trail of pop music invented by the Beatles, like many others. Gary and the Pacemakers, Herman's Hermit, the Dave Clark Five, all of those bands summarized by the US media in 1964 as the British invasion. In 1966, after he separated from Manfred Mann, Paul Jones put out a solo album entitled My Way. And there were others to follow until 1969. If I'm considering the music on all of these albums, I would say mostly bubblegum pop. Cover versions, orchestral arrangements, well-known songs, designed, recorded, produced for teenage audiences. Not that much British psychedelia, which many of us believed who were just part of that neo-psychedelic movement in the mid-80s. In 1967, Paul Jones, as an actor, participated in a movie called Privilege. This was all about a pop singer, a pop star, used by the establishment to brainwash young pop audiences, music audiences in England in 1967. A little bit of a social commentary, social criticism also as part of this otherwise mediocre hippie-esque movie from 1967. A year later, Paul Jones, once again as an actor, participated in a movie called The Committee. This movie had a cult following for decades, not because of Paul Jones, but the music, the soundtrack of that movie had been contributed by Arthur Brown and Pink Floyd, and it wasn't available in any other format for quite a long time. But during the turn of the century, the music business also changed. In 1970, 1971, it was mainly about hard rock, 70s soul, progressive rock. Those were mainly that kind of music a young audience asked for. So Paul Jones and the pop music that he presented during the days with EMI London that was mainly out. But the album I would like to talk about with you today is Paul Jones' Crucifix in a Horseshoe, published in 1971. That's my American edition of that album that I bought in Berlin, approximately 1988, in a secondhand record store for approximately 20 marks. That wasn't much for a Paul Jones album way back then. That was quite fair. And the American pressing looks good and sounds good. But as you can see, originally it had been published on Vertigo Records in the UK, also in 1971, and it looks quite different. It has a fold-out cover with the text, the lyrics in the inside, and the special feature always with Vertigo is the swirl label on page 1 with all the track listing and the lettering on the second side only. That was one of the reasons why this early Vertigo label has still a cult following, and people are paying lots of money for some of the more rare editions of Vertigo records from the early 70s. Crucifix and Horseshoe, the 1971 album of Paul Jones, is totally different from his 60s output. It's rootsy American rock presented and played by a band that is named White Cloud. Mostly American musicians are playing on this album, which had been recorded and produced in New York City. White Cloud was led by Thomas Jefferson Kay, who also arranged the music and all of the songs on this album. It gave Paul Jones an opportunity to get back to his more bluesy and rootsy elements and origins from the early 60s. He is playing harmonica on this album as well. So the album consists of 9 songs. 6 of them had been written by Paul Jones himself, and among the 3 other songs is one that had been written by Loudon Wainwright III. Late 80s, I was already a huge fan of Loudon Wainwright III, and Motel Blues, which is featured on this album of Paul Jones, originally popped up on the second album in 1971 by Loudon Wainwright III. He is a very sarcastic, a humorous, and sometimes even cynical singer-songwriter, which is especially likable, or the reason why I especially like him and his music. So if you have an urge for that, you may also like Paul Jones and Crucifix and a Horseshoe, because the other songs have a tendency for that kind of humor and sharp lyrics as well. The first song on the album is entitled Life After Death, and it starts with, "You be my preacher, I'll be your slave. You'll earn good karma, and I'll dance on your grave." That's funny, that's dark, that's provocative stuff, and it's all about a very religious woman who married the narrator, who turns out to be kind of a parasite, somebody who is like enjoying the marriage and the woman, but because of the marriage, definitely can be sure that he and the woman will stick together until the end of their lives, because she is so religious. So the song itself also is making fun of religion and Christianity, probably not a good idea for addressing an US audience in the early 70s. And Motel Blues is pretty much alike with all of its sarcasm. It's about a rock and roll singer stranded in a small town during a tour. And now he's coming back from the show into his depressing motel room, and he is begging a groupie to spend the night with him to make him survive this night under the depressing circumstances that he feel he is caged in that motel room. There is a great line in here as well. I don't want to make no late night New York calls. I don't want to stare at those ugly grass mat walls. So Wainwright and also Paul Jones on this particular album is creating a very depressing aura and with a lot of wit and fun as well. Paul Jones continued over the 70s with various projects. He was doing acting jobs in television and movies. He was collaborating with Andrew Lloyd Webber for a musical, and he was just being one of the founding members of the Blues Band in 1979, who came out with Ready in 1980. Traditional electric blues rock, nice, quite okay, but nothing special, nothing extraordinary on the other hand as well. Quite traditional. The band was just doing fine during the 80s, so they were well respected amongst their blues orientated audiences, but nothing special for me. For me, it's all about Crucifix and a Horseshoe, an album I really would like to recommend. By the way, White Cloud put out their only album on a label called Good Medicine in 1972. And in the same year, they did accompany Loudon Wainwright III on his third album entitled Album 3 as well. So maybe Loudon Wainwright heard Motel Blues on the Paul Jones album, said, wow, that sounds good, and decided to invite White Cloud to the studio too, because this was his first electric albums. The other two albums before that were just Loudon Wainwright III strumming on his guitar. So that was my little presentation of Crucifix and a Horseshoe by Paul Jones. If you liked it, you may hit the subscribe button, and we will see each other next time when I do present something out of the ordinary right here at Neverland. Bye bye.